Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a man who shares a name similar to me, although my name is Mitchell surname. My nickname used to be Mitch, but
Oh, really?
absolutely, it used to be Mitch when I was younger. Now I
Okay.
just get called Dazza or Razzle, or depending on who it is, hey you.
Hey,
But
you.
Mitch Russo, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you
Thank you. Thank you, Dada. Nice to meet you.
on. So Mitch, you're a very experienced man. You're just saying you've written 4 books, and you're in the middle of writing another book, which is almost like a business parables type of arrangement. And you're in
Yes.
the middle of writing it right now. In fact, you were saying before that today is the day that you literally head down, bum up, and write. So I really appreciate you taking some time out to talk to me.
Of course.
You're also a business growth strategist and have a long history in helping businesses scale. And you're
Yes.
also doing a lot of work in the AI space as well. So I'm very much looking forward to this. As we talked about before the podcast started, no idea what questions I'm going to ask you, and we don't know which direction this is going to go, but it promises to be a really good conversation.
Those are the best kind, in my
Absolutely.
opinion. Yeah.
So, Mitch, love to know for the benefit of the audience, your background. So, what has led you to doing what you're doing today, working with businesses, helping them scale, working in the AI space?
So I'll start with some of my past experience, which you briefly mentioned. My original business was a software company. So I started Timeslips Corporation back a long time ago, 1985. And 9 years later, we sold that company for 8 figures, and we had no VC investment. We had just a simple line of credit from the bank, and made a lot of mistakes in the process. So I learned a lot from that. After I sold the company, I went on to become the chief operating officer of Sage PLC out of the UK. My job was the chief operating officer of the US division,
Hmm.
not of all of Sage UK. In that role, I got to manage a much larger group than I did at Timeslips. Timeslips, we had about 100 employees. When I went and moved to Sage as chief operating officer, I was working my management team collectively. We were managing about 300 people, and then later, when I became partners with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes, that team was about the same size, about 330 people. So we had a huge sales force in both of those businesses, but we had broken up sales into several categories. So we could
Hmm.
talk about that later if you like.
Hmm.
But unlike a lot of companies, we didn't just have a sales department. We had a frontline sales department that did a lot of what we call the first call closers.
Yes.
And then from there, we had a webinar system, which you spoke to my dear friend Doug Brown about. And he shared how that worked, and that was very effective. And then finally, for those people who did in fact purchase the webinar at $239 or $229, we then had a consultative sales division that would go deep with clients over the course of many weeks and enroll them into as many as 7 of our different services.
Mm.
So sales for us has always been a very key element of everything we did.
And when you think about sales, and I know you spent quite a few years as the CEO at Business Breakthroughs with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. When you think about sales, because I often ask this question of sales teams and non-sales people, what's your definition of sales? What's your key philosophy around sales?
Okay, so I'll give you a very broad definition, and then if you don't mind, we'll then
Yeah.
go a little bit deeper as we talk. So in the general sense, a good salesperson is able to capture the interest of a prospect, build affinity with them, and then offer them something that they are interested in a way that they're interested in hearing about it.
Mm.
So that is the basic understanding of a sales cycle. When we were hiring salespeople, we did not hire based on experience or resume. We based all of our hiring decisions on personality
Wow.
and family traits. Now you might say,
Nice.
well, that doesn't sound right. I mean, but as an example, one of our top salespeople was formerly a pastor.
Hmm.
Now, if she would have applied for that sales position at another company, and they would have said, "Well, what's your experience?" She probably wouldn't have gotten that job. But once we finalized her personality tests and understood who she was, and understood her family of origin and how that affected who she is today, that made enormous sense. And that's how we hired most of our top, not the most, all of our salespeople was through this analysis cycle that we had sort of invented and perfected over the years.
Wow, which completely sounds counterintuitive to what most companies do, even
Right.
today. So I look at a lot of companies who are recruiting in sales and I look at their advertisements, and just about every single one of them will stipulate X number of years of experience in this particular industry or with this
Mhm.
particular product or with this particular SaaS product or whatever the case might be,
Right.
which doesn't really bring into personality, or personality might be secondary as long as you demonstrate this experience. So looking
Sure.
back on that, what was obviously there was a punt that you took in that regard. Um, was it something intuitive that you thought, no, we just need to get good people, or you felt that sales is something that you can teach as a skill set?
No, first of all, let's roll this back one step further. Um, a great salesperson must have a few important characteristics. Maybe the most important characteristic is self-esteem.
Mm,
So where does self-esteem come from? Self-esteem psychologically comes from family background.
mm,
So if you could determine that a person has self-esteem with a set of very carefully crafted, targeted questions, then you'll know right away whether or not you have a winner or not. So
mm.
we used to run these ads. They were very, very over the top ads. You could make up to $300,000 in sales, but don't apply for this job unless you're absolutely the best at what you do and have been. So now at this point, we're going to get people who look at that ad and go, yeah, that's not me. And they're going to stop. Right then and there, they're going to stop. The
Yeah,
ones that do apply, we would, and by the way, what I'm describing, by the way, is a sales technique that Chet Holmes had developed years before and written about in his book, The Ultimate Sales Machine.
yeah,
So this technique is very simple. You basically get them on the phone. It's a very short interview at first. And you say, so tell me about your background. Well, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And then after listening to them speak for a minute, you, as the interviewer, says, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm just not hearing sales superstar here. And you shut up. 90% of the people on the phone will hang up and say, okay, well, thank you very much, and end the call. 10% will say, well, then maybe you're deaf because I told you I was the top producer at this company and this I was number 3 out of 500 at this company, et cetera, et cetera. So now I know I had someone who gets past stage one,
yeah,
which is I have basic self-esteem and I'm confident in my abilities.
yes.
Does that make sense so far? I'm sure it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because well, you've got to have a bit of gumption to back yourself, which means you have to
Exactly.
have a healthy level of self-awareness, but also self-esteem to back yourself and say, hang on a
Right.
second, I am good at what I do.
Exactly. Now, there's a second part to this. If you have a lot of self-esteem, you might be considered a hard closer,
Mm,
right? But if you have self-esteem and you have the ability to build rapport, well, now we're talking about a different type of person.
mm,
Now we're talking about a person with enormous potential.
yeah,
So now what we do is we put these two pieces together and then we test them. And we see, okay, well, you seem to have good self-esteem. You know, you know who you are. You seem to anyway. Let's see if you could build rapport.
yeah,
show me in your background what rapport looks like. And I don't ask the question that way. I have a, and like I said before, when I first started with Chet, he was a friend that asked me for some help.
Okay.
I didn't enroll or become, I didn't answer an ad to take a job. In fact, I wasn't interested in a job. I had just sold my company for 8 figures. The
Yeah.
last thing I cared about was a job. Um, I mean, realistically, all I was interested in doing uh, was not having a bunch of employees bothering me for the last 10 years, 13 years as I had. I wanted to be left alone and trade options in my living room the way I had been previously. So when he asked me for some help and I said yes, I said, let's figure out where you need the most help and how I could apply that and let me solve a problem for you. And then I'll go back to doing what I did before.
Yeah.
So I found out that the problem he was having was sales and recruiting.
Yeah. Okay.
So I said, well, Chet, teach me how you recruit. And he goes, just read chapter 5 of my book, or maybe it was chapter 4 at the time, on how to hire sales superstars. So I read the chapter of the book. He then asked me to interview another guy on his team, and I did. And I got the overarching philosophical idea about this method I just described.
Hmm.
Well, I just sold a software company. I'm a software guy. So what I did is I took that and I systematized it. I took that and I built systems around it. So I was able to figure out exactly what the key elements were in a recruitment cycle and built flow charts and mind maps so that once I perfected the process, I could then hire a team of recruiters to do the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I proved my process over and over again. And then once I did, I tripled the sales force in 6 weeks for Chet. And then I said to Chet, "Okay, Chet, I'm done. And by the way, I identified a guy who's going to be your sales manager. So you're all set. So I'm going back to my life as an options trader." And he goes, "Oh, no, you're not."
No, you're not. So is that when he made you the CEO or the president?
No, no, he just basically told me that I had not realizing it. He said, "Well, what am I supposed to do with this $18,000 check on my desk with your name on it?" I said, "Wait a minute. We're friends. You don't pay your friends. I didn't ask to be paid." And he goes,
Yeah.
"Mitch, I'm not paying you. That's what
Yeah.
you earned from the salespeople you hired. That's your share.
Right.
Do you want it or not?"
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'll send it along, sure."
Why not? Why not?
You know,
So so when you look at that, because a lot of people that have been around sales or been approached by sales have a perception of sales around being pushy, being closed on, first opportunity, and often people who are trained in sales, particularly as SDRs and business development execs, are saying, well, you've got a live customer in front of you, so take every opportunity to close them because you may not get the opportunity to come back again. What you've just described is the personality in terms of does this person have a really healthy self-esteem, and can this person actually build a level of rapport and connection with a customer?
right.
So when you look at sales today, and I know you do a lot of work with a lot of businesses, um, is that changing in terms of how we're recruiting? And it probably isn't based on what we've just spoken about in terms of experience as a prerequisite, but are you seeing, I guess, a shift in the way salespeople are perceived in the marketplace and how companies view their salespeople in relation to being an actual asset rather than just as a transaction to get more business in?
Well, let's be honest. Turns out that almost all salespeople are hired with the intention of being transaction oriented. We know that. So let's just tell the truth here. And salespeople are hired to make the company money.
Yeah,
It's a financial equation. If I hire this guy and pay him X dollars in base salary and Y dollars in commission, will he make us 200 to 300% of what we pay him?
yeah,
Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you asked the question before, the answer varies by the level of sales, meaning number one, what am I selling and how much does it cost? Am I selling a webinar for $239
mm,
or am I selling a $1.8 million development contract or am I selling $250 million water treatment plant.
Mm,
So the idea here is, what are you selling? Who are you selling to? What is the mindset of the people that you're trying to close? And you said something before about, well, a salesperson wants to try and close, as often as possible because they may not get a chance again to do that. The right salespeople, they don't need to close at all. The right salespeople get a prospect to the point where they're asking if they could place the order.
mm,
And that's the goal. That's how you know you're dealing with a top professional when it comes to a salesperson. Once you're at that level, then, as they say, the world is an oyster for you. You could command any amount of money you want. You can basically write your own ticket. Why? Because you understand what it takes to build that relationship, and likely you've done it for a long time and can do it quickly.
mm. I love that, Mitch, because it's literally, and I say to sales teams all the time, and sales leaders in particular, especially when they're under pressure to hit a quota, hit a target. Um, Often desperation can come in,
Mhm.
and desperation can lead to the old commission breath type of an approach where customers feel as if, oh, you're just doing all this and saying all this because it's what you need in order to close a deal to get a quota done by the end of the month, etc., etc. Versus if we take the pressure completely off, and if we're saying we're here to be of service, whether you buy today, whether you buy next week, or whether you buy next year, we're still going to be here. The sale often starts after the first sale is made. So I'm particularly interested in the work when you were talking about the webinar and then handing over to the consultative sales team. How did the I guess the focus on the customer experience play out, where you had customers who felt this was not something I'm being sold to in terms of an upsell, but it's something that is natural in terms of, yeah, I want to lean in and do this because of how the organization and the people are making me feel.
Sure. So in this particular process, excuse me, the way it worked was that we were offering a business growth workshop online, 3-hour business growth workshop for $229.
Yeah.
Now, we sent you in advance an entire file of printouts that you had to then fill in with your numbers, and we asked you a lot of questions, and you needed to come prepared to this workshop with everything filled in. So number one, you're investing both your money and your time before you even show up.
Mm,
Now you show up and you notice, the first thing you notice is that there aren't 200 people on this webinar, there are 12.
yeah.
And before you realize that this is not a one-way webinar, but this is a two-way conversation between the webinar leader and every individual in that room.
Yeah.
And now we are going through the materials and we're asking individuals, what were your numbers, Bob? What were your numbers, Ryan? What were your numbers, Michael? And we are becoming connected directly with the people in the room. So that's where the rapport building comes in.
Mm,
So then and by the way, Doug perfected a lot of this process. So what would then happen is, by around the second hour, the webinar leader goes around and says to the people listening in the webinar, so if you were to apply everything that we took you through today, all of the growth mechanisms that we have discussed that you have already now projected into your own business, what would they be worth to you?
yeah.
Usually about the smallest number we would get is about $50,000.
Yeah.
The largest number we'd get is about $2 to $5 million. So what you're saying, Donald, is that if you were to apply everything we taught you so far, and we're not
Mm,
done yet, that this webinar, this masterclass is already worth $50,000 to you. Is that right?
yeah.
And how much did you pay? $239? Excellent. Okay, good.
Okay,
So
well,
what are we doing here? What are we doing? Do you psychologically, what are we doing?
well, first of all, using the Cialdini law of consistency and commitment. But if the person is paying 229, the return on that in terms of a pure value number in the business owners or the sales leaders world is huge, to the point where when they're given an opportunity to maybe work further, they can't say no because it's a no-brainer.
Right. So finally, we get to the end of the webinar and we say, well, look, uh, and one of the things about a great webinar leader, again, I keep telling you more about Doug, but because he is a friend and I admired his work. One of the things he would do very well is he up front, before the whole webinar would start, before the masterclass began, he would say, by the way, I want you to know that there'll be an offer at the end of this. And if you're interested in, stick around. If you're not, no problem. You could
Yeah,
just drop off. So
yeah,
by the end of the webinar, or be about a half hour before it actually ends, the webinar leader is simply saying, well, listen, we have developed a home study system. It's called the uh, it slipped my mind at the moment. I apologize. But the bottom line is that it was a home study program. It was a course, the ultimate business sales system, whatever it was, that's $4,000.
yeah.
Now, the simple comparison is, well, look, if you just learned all of this for $229, what do you think you're going to get if you spend $4,000?
Mm,
So we have set up this mental multiplier in advance so that the $4,000 price seems trivial,
yeah.
which is why we were getting about a 40% close rate in our masterclass sessions.
Mm,
So what that meant was that the bottom line here is that 40% of a room of 12 people, let's make the numbers simple, make it 10. So four people would spend 4,000, that's $16,000 in one masterclass webinar.
mm,
But here's the interesting thing. Over the course of the relationship that we built with that individual, on average, for every single person, whether they bought the advanced program or not, the lifetime value was $11,200.
mm,
So that means that the ones who bought the $4,000 program, one of the things that we did, which was very innovative at the time, is we would say to those people in the room, look, don't worry. We're not just going to give you a bunch of home study stuff. We're going to give you a free coach who's going to work with you one-on-one for 4 sessions.
mm-hmm.
And you can ask that coach anything you want. You could get their help in implementing everything that you have in your business mastery kit. And at that point, at the end of the 4 sessions, if you choose to, you could hire that coach to continue working with you. So you see what we're doing here. So bottom
Yeah.
line now is we're providing a natural pathway for the relationship to continue beyond that.
Mm,
Now, is it true that occasionally people would say, I want my money back? Of course. It's like
yeah.
any other product. The reason that they'd want their money back is they never had time to crack the box.
Yeah.
So the
That's it.
box arrives, it sits at the front door. It was a big box at the time, came with binders and CDs and workbooks and videos and all this other stuff. And for those people who never touched it, they never would have anyway. So we knew that they'd send the
Yeah.
box back, they'd get the money back. But for those who went forward, we were selling them anywhere between 3 and 7 different services that our company offered.
And with that, you would have been doing it because organizations like the Chet Holmes and Tony Robbins organization doesn't stick around for so many years unless they're doing something right.
Right.
So, from a values perspective, and we talk a lot about ethics in sales and how you've got to be an ethical person because if you're not, you'll get found out very quickly. Um, did you have statistics around the number of people that you worked with who then referred others to you without you guys having to proactively market and bring in brand new businesses, brand new customers?
Yes, but I want to give you some more perspective on that.
Yeah,
One of the things that we would train our salespeople to do once they passed through our screening process, once they proved themselves that they were worthy to be on our team, at that point, we made sure that they understood the product we were selling.
yeah,
And we wanted to make sure that they didn't just understand it, but they realized how incredible it was.
yeah,
And once they realized how amazing and incredible and valuable this product was, we then set up a scenario where we helped them to fully understand that they would be depriving a prospect of the value that they could potentially bring to not just them, but to their whole family and to all of the customers in their business too.
mm,
We called that creating a moral obligation. So
Yes.
when we spoke to trained salespeople, we said, listen, if you don't feel you have a moral obligation to sell this product, then you don't belong on this team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Which,
number one, go
yeah,
ahead.
go, sorry. No, keep going. Keep going.
I say number one, we now know the salesperson has the conviction because
Mm,
they've been through the product, they have the product, they understand the product. Number two, we now know that that person, because we've already screened them, we know that they have the self-confidence to continue to close while staying in rapport
yeah.
until the client buys or whatever hangs up or whatever that may be. Um, so the bottom line at this point is that we now know that the client is a perfect match for the product. Salesperson is a perfect match for the prospect.
Yeah.
At this point, to answer your question, we had a very, very strong referral rate that came from, yes, we did have numbers. We had numbers on everything. I just don't remember what it was at the
Yeah. Yeah.
moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
a long
But
time
that's
ago.
but that's the key thing though. It's the and I love the way you talked about the moral obligation because you've got to have a belief in the product or the service that you are selling.
Yeah,
And you have to believe that this can be of service to a prospect, to a customer that's going to solve a problem,
yeah.
not doing it because you know you're going to get a commission check as a result of selling that. So, and I'm sure there would have been still metrics and targets that you had to
Oh yeah.
adhere to.
Oh yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about the businesses today? Because I know that particularly, and we'll jump into AI shortly, but organizations are in a very competitive marketplace. We're now operating in a global marketplace for many very many organizations. So talking about I guess the pressure balance between providing service, building rapport, staying in this for the long haul, um, getting customers ready to make a buying decision rather than being felt as if they're being sold to, and then managing the expectations of having to get the number
Mhm.
by the end of the month, by the end of the quarter. So, was there a certain system that you guys were using at Business Breakthrough, and do you have a certain system today that you advise clients on, or is it as simple as, hey, you just need to have enough customers to talk to, and the numbers will take care of themselves?
Well, I mean, clearly you need to have a pretty full pipeline. I mean, that's what you're saying. Yes, you still need a full pipeline no matter what. If it's too full, then that means that that particular prospect somebody might try to sell them something once and never call back or never try again because there's so many prospects, there's no point in wasting time going back when you have a new one. So there is a balance of how many prospects to bring into a sales environment. Number two, when we had a policy of every month we evaluated our entire sales team and we dropped the 10% of the lowest ones. We dropped the
Hmm.
lowest performing 10%. And it wasn't because they were bad, it was because they were not doing the same amount of work as the others.
Right.
So what is the same amount of work? Well, again, everything we did was very carefully scripted. We had sequences for everything. So it was not unusual for a salesperson to follow up on a prospect between 5 and 12 times before they either got a complete no or they closed the deal.
Mm.
When we looked at those who weren't performing, it was very simple. Those were the ones who weren't following up. Those were the ones who weren't following the script. So we scripted our sales calls precisely. And I had a system back before there were systems. We had to build our own. And we were able to literally watch calls as they were taking place in a dashboard so I could see how long each salesperson is on each call with each prospect. And
Yeah.
I could tell by the call length whether or not they were going to close them or not. It was that simple. So now I'm looking at my dashboard and I'm saying, okay, this call should close within the next 30 to 60 seconds, or the guy is talking too much, or the guy isn't following the sales script, or. But the bottom line is that what we discovered is that the simplistic element of this is that if you follow the script, if you take it exactly the way we trained you to, you'll achieve more sales than the creative, intelligent, imaginative sales guy who wants to engage in conversation instead of close the deal.
Oh, there's lots of them out there, Mitch, isn't there?
Yeah,
Let's
oh
just
yeah.
let's hope because I'm such a charismatic individual and I'm full of energy, you're just gonna fall over yourself to want to buy my product, and I haven't even told you about the product.
That's kind of how it works, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. What's
Yeah.
interesting, you're mentioning there between 5 and 12 follow-ups, and the power certainly is in the follow-up. And I know Gartner's done recent research on this, and it's interesting, isn't it, that how many salespeople give up on the first or second contact, but the very vast majority of sales, I think it's something like 80 to 84% is now made between the fifth and 12th plus contact. So it's really interesting. You just got to work the numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's right. But instead of just saying, yes, it's all about the numbers, I wanted to give you the perspective.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, people might be listening to this and say, "Oh, I've got to call my customer 5 or 12 times." And no, that's not what we're saying. You've got to still add value and
Mm,
give them something to feel as if they want to continue to engage with you. Because if you just become annoying,
yep,
then they'll just tell you to go off, go away.
that's right. Exactly. Exactly.
So when we're looking at the modern sales team, the modern sales business, because what you were describing was a business model that was working, say, 10 years ago. Um, what's kind of changed? And I want to sort of weave into this the AI component as well.
Sure. So in
So,
essence, what's changed more than anything else is that the speed of the movement speed of transaction has changed.
yeah,
Right now, you have people closing 4 and 5 figure deals on Facebook Messenger.
yeah,
So you have people who are, bombarding others with email sequences, and of course funnels that close all these deals. So there's really online sales which are optimized for people who buy that way, and then there's telephone sales, which requires a more conventional type of skill building and prospecting. And then, of course, there's the very high end sale, which means you have a sales force. They get into the car, they drive to see a prospect. And I mean, that was my life for many
yeah,
years. I was, I basically was a sales rep for a semiconductor company. And if I didn't get in the car and be face to face with the customer, there's no chance of me making a sale.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it all depends on really which element of what type of sale you're trying to make.
Mm. But it all comes down to you're still dealing with people. So
Exactly.
I'm looking at I I often drive into the city. I'm about an hour north of Melbourne here in Australia.
Okay.
So, yeah, back in the day when I was in a car going to appointments, I'm thinking I could do that because the traffic wasn't as bad.
Right.
Now it can it can literally take me about 2 hours to get home from the city, which is
Sure.
probably an hour longer than it should. But I'm thinking to myself, how could I have done what I did, 15, 20 years ago
Yep.
today? And how do consultative salespeople who are relied upon to go and press the flesh, do the nose to nose, the toe to toe sort of engagement, how can they still be effective? So I'm curious in terms of like the work that you do and the strategies you build with customers, and also with sales forces. How do we still utilize technology to still provide the same level of customization, experience, engagement? Because things like Zoom, for example, has brought the world a lot closer together, right? So
Hmm.
ordinarily, you and I would not have been talking like this. We would have been, if anything, talking over a telephone, right? But the fact
Right.
that I can see you, you can see me, it's like we're in the same room, even though we
Right.
are on the other sides of the world.
Right.
Some thoughts on that because there's a lot of organizations that are looking at how to become more efficient, more effective, how to get access to more customers in a shorter period of time, but still provide the same level of, I guess, customization and customized service, for want of a better term.
Sure. So the application of technology is best applied to the front end of the sales process, meaning prospect generation.
Yeah.
So if you have a mechanism that is working for you, is cost effectively working for you, then ideally you just increase the dollars and you increase the number of prospects, and it happens economically. So
Mm.
if you put in $300, you get 600 or 900 back. That's an effective prospect generation system. roughly. I mean, obviously, it's there's much more complicated than that. So, just a little bit of a sort of an overview of what I do now when I work with clients. So, my first goal is to understand the business, then the sales cycle. And let me explain why. In
Mm,
most cases, people are either selling the wrong thing or selling it the wrong way.
mm,
So my goal is first to understand the business and the products, and I do that with, I would call it a simple two-dimensional business map or mind map, which helps me really visualize the entire process from start to finish. Once I do that and I show it to my client, usually within the first few hours of us working together, they're seeing it a completely different way than they've ever seen it before.
yeah.
They've never understood really what it takes for them to make a product, to sell a product, to market a product. All they know is that they hire people, they close the deals, and it gets done. Now, when I show it to them this way, they're saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm leaving a fortune on the table." And I say,
Mm,
"Yes, you are." So, as a strategist, my goal is not to tactically implement things or teach them how to do that. My goal is to understand the best strategy for multiplication of revenue and profits. Or, in effect, what we're trying to do is really multiply the whole business. That's my goal. And what that may mean is I'm employing sales strategies, marketing strategies, management strategies, product development strategies, anything it takes to optimize the product, optimize the sales cycle, and optimize the customer, the end customer's goal of receiving what it is that they purchased.
mm,
So technology is best applied in the areas that make that better. Where is it going to be better? Well, getting prospects. Back then, many, many years ago, as you know, there was nothing but radio and television. And for many, that worked fine. Then different mechanisms came into play. Then there were the internet, and then there was email. Well, first there was email, then there was internet,
mm,
and all of that became a way to generate prospects. And those worked really well until they got optimized. I mean, if you may not remember, you're probably not old enough to remember the days when your inboxes, when your home post box was flooded with junk mail. I mean, at a business owner would be getting 40 to 60 pieces of junk mail a day because it was the only way people could market back then.
yeah. Yeah.
Now it's refreshing when you finally do get something in the mail, and it's some sort of a sales prospecting piece because it's unusual that people spend the money to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So it
Absolutely.
really all depends on it's an application of the right technique and materials at the right time. So my goal with the client is simply to find what's optimum, and then once we do, we prioritize the exact steps it takes to create that. And if that means the first thing we do, let's say we look at everything and we make some decisions and we say, yeah, we can increase the price here. Yes, we could shorten the development cycle there. Okay, what we need now is we need more calls. We need to get more salespeople calling prospects. So then we put a hiring plan in place.
Yeah.
If it says, we have a great team in place, but we're losing money on them because we're paying them wrong. So we re-engineer the way our best salespeople are paid. Interestingly enough, we could save the company a lot of money by eliminating base salaries completely and
Hmm.
making all of how we compensate our salespeople on commission only or performance only. What that does is it gets rid of the folks who enjoy their base salary and have figured out a way to live on that, as opposed to wanting to really be hungry and make a lot more money using a performance-based model. So again, I apologize. It's a long answer, but that's kind of the process that we normally take people through.
That's nice because it then comes back to, I guess, the recruiting strategy you talked about earlier, because you want to have people who feel as if it's a moral obligation to want to sell this product. They're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And they know that they're going to get compensated for it, but they're not doing it for the compensation, even though they are. But you know what I mean? They're actually
Of
doing it because
course.
it's the right thing to do. So it's a
And
good strategy.
right. And if you build that rapport, the side benefit is that if you're the sales guy and you're building that rapport, then you're going to get referral sales from people in the same industry.
Yeah.
And the simplest example of that is, your basic automobile salesman. If you think about the lowest level of guys, pounding the street and doing handshake sales, it's the car salesman. But here's the interesting thing. A great car salesman is appreciated, not loathed, like so many people have thought about the car
Yeah,
salesman. A
yeah,
great sales car salesman is not only appreciated, but referred to by their family members.
yes. And it sounds counterintuitive, but I totally agree with you because I've seen it happen in Australia.
Sure.
Um, I've seen a lot of dodgy salespeople,
Oh, of course.
and I mean, I had a personal experience. I had and I still drive it today, a Volkswagen Passat, and
Yeah.
this is a 2008 model, so it's coming up to 17 years old. But
Wow.
it's a great car. Absolutely love it. But the salesperson leading up to the sale was all over me. And you talk about the follow up. We
Yeah.
got to a stage where it was literally a follow up per day. Now, finally got the deal done, signed the contract, got the understanding as to when the car would be delivered, and then crickets,
Hmm.
nothing. I saw him about 3 months later when I took the car in to get a service. He walked across the sales floor, saw me, didn't say hello, and I don't even know if he recognized me.
Probably not.
Guess who
Yeah.
didn't get referrals, Mitch?
Yeah. Not only did he get referrals, but you know what he also missed out on is he missed out on calling you 5 years later or 7 years later and saying, by the way, I know you have this Passat and I know that you love the car. Well, we have a newer model here and I can give you an amazing trade-in value on what you have.
Yes.
He never did that. So you
Nope.
still have the same car that you
Same car.
had for 17 years and you're fine with that, but the opportunity was there for him to upsell you to a newer model.
Yes, yes. And I use that example just about in every training course that I run that has direct sales involved in it because
Mhm.
it was just an example that the sale was he thought the sale stopped when he got my contract signed.
Exactly.
But he didn't have any concept, and I'm not big noting myself, but he didn't know that I had 4 or 5 people who were in the market within the
Sure.
first 30 days after me getting a car that
Right.
could have been an opportunity for him. Even if he
Right.
closed one or two of those, he probably would have helped get his monthly target, but he chose not to.
So I'll tell you the exact opposite story. When I first moved to Dallas, Texas, and I saw after selling my company, by the way, when the day I sold my company, I had a total of $2,000 in my bank account. After I sold my company, I had millions of dollars in my bank account. And so, I went to the Mercedes dealer because now I was a hot shot all of a sudden. Uh, and I was going to buy a Mercedes. And I met one of the sweetest, kindest, most patient salespeople I ever met in my life. Became a, a friend of this man, referred 5 or 6 others people to him, and went back to him over and over again to buy more cars for other family members, and later to upgrade my own car. So I mean, the opposite is so much more valuable than the poor schnook who never follows up and makes his one sale and doesn't even say hi when he walks across the sales floor. Am I right? I mean, it's just
Totally.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Totally. And this is why we keep saying that in sales, it's not about the transaction, it's about the lifetime value. And you mentioned it before.
Yep.
Understand what your lifetime value is, and it's amazing
Exactly.
what you can actually now start to achieve as long as you're continuing to deliver value and it's going to be beneficial to that customer.
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's talk about AI because I know that
Mhm.
you do a lot of work in that, and you were just telling me before we press record that you're nearly at a point where you've got the Mitch Russo cyborg that's been set up. There's a lot of people I talk to in sales are quite excited by
Yep.
what AI is doing and potentially what will continue to do, but equally, there's people who are quite concerned with what AI is doing and will potentially do. So where do you sit in the scale around AI in the work that you do?
Well, first of all, one of the secrets to my personal success is enjoying the things that I do. So if I'm not excited about something or enthusiastic about something, uh, I'm not going to be that good at it, and I probably shouldn't do it. So
Yeah.
when I was a kid in school, I would get A's in science and math and D's in history and English. which is ironic because now I'm an author and published author. But anyway, um, because I was excited about science and math. I
Yeah.
loved science. So what I started to do, like the week that OpenAI released ChatGPT, is I started studying AI and I started to learn, and I realized, look, I don't, this is brand new. I don't know anything about this, and I'm not even a young person anymore. I need to get some help here.
Yeah.
So I basically hired an AI coach,
Okay.
and started working with this coach on a weekly basis so that he could bring me up to speed on everything that AI is capable of. So I run workshops, AI workshops now for corporations. And in a 2.5, 3 hour workshop, we can change the entire nature of a department who's never used and been afraid of AI to completely embracing AI and using it now and making the company and the people in the department far more productive than ever before.
Hmm.
One of the things is, you should be able to replace yourself on the front end of your own selling cycle. Now, I shared with you, and you could, by the way, if you choose to, share it with your community as well. I
Yeah.
shared with you my clone.
Yeah.
And if you like, I can demonstrate it right now. I could actually go on and talk to it, and you could sort of hear what the clone would say as if it were me.
Sure.
You want me to do
Let's
that? All
do
right.
it.
All right. So it's now going to make a phone call. I have to turn the volume up on my computer. Let's see. Start the call. All right. Here it is.
Hi, I'm not actually Mitch, but an AI version. Do you have a question for me?
Yes, I do. I'd like to know what the best sales strategy is for a mid-sized business selling a $2,000 product using the internet for marketing.
For a mid-sized business selling a $2,000 product online, the key is to focus on building trust and delivering value up front. Start by identifying your ideal customer, your avatar, and create content that speaks directly to their needs and pain points. Use targeted ads to drive traffic to a lead magnet, like a free guide or webinar that showcases your expertise and builds credibility. From there, nurture those leads with email sequences and personalized follow-ups to guide them toward the purchase. Does that align with what you're looking to achieve?
I'm gonna hang up now. Or Darren, if you prefer, I could just leave the Mitch Russo clone
Uh,
on, and you can continue the interview with him.
Isn't that amazing? He sounds like you.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
when you hear that back,
Yeah.
what's the first thing you're thinking about? When did I say that?
I thought, well, that's a pretty good answer, actually.
He's a pretty sharp cookie.
This guy knows his stuff. So bottom line is that everyone should do this. Every single company, every single person in a company should do this, and you should make it available to your prospects and clients. And by the way, if you make this available to clients, you could charge for it.
Yeah,
So you could have my normal rate, whatever that might be. Let's call it $2,000 an hour. My
yeah,
normal rate is $2,000 an hour, but you can subscribe to my clone for $495 a month.
yeah, yeah. And get access because, as you said before, you've fed in all your books and all the information into that, and you're thinking, man, that 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 Mitch Russo clone that knows everything. And I think, gee, did I actually write that back in the day?
Yeah, exactly. Now, by the way, I could teach somebody how to create what I just showed you in under 2 hours.
Yeah,
I could
okay.
take them through the whole process. All I would tell them to do beforehand is to know where all their content is. Content means YouTube videos, podcast videos, blog posts, articles, books, whatever they've created, just have access to it so we can work with that.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. So here's the question then, from an AI perspective. Should we be embracing it or should we be concerned about it? Particularly from a selling perspective, as in the role of a salesperson.
Well, okay, so I'll answer that with another question. I'll start my answer with a question. So, in the days of horses and carriages, um, would the buggy whip salesman say, "Oh my God, these automobiles are going to drive me out of business," or instead should he say, "Well, okay, I can't sell buggy whips anymore. Maybe I should learn to sell cars instead. So here's the idea. If you are a salesperson and you're not using AI, then AI is going to replace you.
Yeah.
It will take your job. And it's taken the jobs of many low-level people and some mid-level people too.
Yes.
So your job is not to do what you did before, but to level up.
Mm.
Always be leveling up. Always know what the next level is above you and do it. Whether it takes work, education, learning, whatever. But here's the bottom line when it comes to AI. And it's the simplest way I think I can put it. Information is pretty much free now.
Yeah.
There's information used to be very valuable.
Yes.
Everything that you would, share with somebody would cost money. Now it's free. Now
Mm.
you can get all the information you could possibly imagine free. What's not free is implementation.
Yes.
So if you can't show somebody how to do something, if you can't walk them through a process that will bring them value and benefit, then the bottom line is that you are going to be replaced by AI. A simple example, here in the States, we have paralegals.
Hmm.
They are like junior lawyers, right? And bottom line is that paralegals have been made pretty much obsolete by AI.
Yeah.
Any kind of research you could ever want to do on a legal basis or any kind of I just signed a contract with a partner, a business partner, who's now effectively becoming my partner in one of my companies. And we did the entire thing with AI, the entire
Hmm.
contract. And in fact, we even signed it online. So this is what I'm saying. I mean, if you say, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, I don't really have to worry about AI, you're in trouble.
Well, and the people that I keep talking to around this, and you've shown a great example of it, is they're looking for ways that they can leverage it, that
Yes,
they can provide even better, deeper, more relevant levels of service to their customers, because they realize that if they don't keep up with it and use it, they will be replaced. They'll become not so much obsolete, but potentially irrelevant in the marketplace they're operating in. So,
that's
um,
right.
and a lot of them are saying it's an augmentation rather than a replacement for many people. Because you said it yourself, right? Information is free, and certainly from a selling perspective, there's so much research you can do using AI today to think about, hey, you're talking about personality types. I'm about to go and talk to the president of this organization. Tell me all I need to know about their personality type, etc., and what sort of questions I should be asking. Versus
Mhm.
back in the day, you would have almost had to have gone in and sort of winged it and adjusted on the spot. But it's the implementation part because people will still pay a premium to be close to the momentum and the implementation of a service or of a product.
Exactly. And the bottom line is that if you are not staying up to speed, if you are not implementing, if you're a CEO and you're listening to this now, and you are not pressing people, forcing people, pushing AI into your organization, beware.
Mm.
The end is near.
Yeah. But do you know what, Mitch? I was fascinated. I was talking to some government people yesterday where they're part of their government, they have banned AI.
Okay.
And I'm hearing in certain schools and certain areas they're also banning AI as well, which is fascinating. And we're thinking, well, that's really good to prepare the next generation of business people by not giving them access to the tools that can help them learn even quicker.
Well, I was reading a few days ago a little bit about how AI is now being used in schools. And I don't know, as you probably know, since Trump is elected, he's basically dismantled the entire infrastructure, education infrastructure in the government, and returning control of the schools back to the states and communities where it belongs.
Yeah.
And one of the things that savvy, smart teachers in schools are doing now is they're literally not just teaching students to use AI, they're using AI to teach their students. And what's turns out to work even better is that AI knows how to teach a young person better than a human being does because that same AI has taught several million young people the same thing.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
sort of like if you go back to the analogy of hiring a salesperson, would you rather have the best salesperson who lives within a 30-mile radius of your company, or would you rather have the best salesperson in the world?
Mm.
Because with technology, you can have that salesperson sit anywhere at any time, taking your phone calls, connecting with your clients. Same thing with AI.
Yeah.
Would you rather have the best teacher in your city, or would you rather have the best teacher in the world?
That's it. That's it. And with the world now being so more directly connected, it means that organizations don't necessarily have to find that person who was within the 30-mile radius. They can get somebody who can be on the other side of the world, particularly if you're in a global marketplace, who can still be really effective.
Correct. And,
Yeah.
and the bottom line is that I also want to make it clear, it doesn't mean that you have to have safeguards. You can't disregard
Mm.
what AI does and just turn everything over to AI. AI is biased. It's biased by people because it's using the content from human beings
Yes.
for its intelligence. So if you're not monitoring that and it's not providing the type of guidance, or better yet, if you have not clearly specified exactly what you want from AI,
Mm.
then you're going to get what the general population gets as opposed to exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Very, very, very important.
Yeah, love it, love it. Great way to finish this off. So, a couple of questions. One, if there was one thing to leave the audience with, as we're still in the early phases of 2025, I can't believe it's nearly Easter. If there was one key focus that you're, I guess, talking about to your clients for 2025, what would that be?
Improve your processes now.
Yeah.
Right now people say that we're going into a global recession. I mean, look, let's it's March of 2025, as you said. We're at this moment in time, and yes, the world is in shock because of everything that's going on right now all over the world.
Mm.
But these things pass. And I have a feeling that in a short period of time, maybe shorter than most people think, we're going to be in that cycle again where we're really, really expanding, maybe expanding from a better place now,
Yeah.
from stability.
Yeah.
And with that expansion, the only way that you'll truly be able to scale your company is if your people are better prepared, if your systems are refined, if your strategy is perfected. If you are, it's sort of like imagine if you had gears in a transmission where every fourth or fifth tooth one was broken off.
Mm.
That's what most companies have right now. If
Yeah.
you were to perfect your business strategy, if you go through the process of building a true business strategy and implementing it step by step, bottom line is you're going to be way ahead of where you are today.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely love it. And Mitch, for people who are wanting to learn more about you, to connect with you, get copies of your books, one being The Power Tribes, which you've got on the screen there, but the other one being The Invisible Organization, and to learn more about the upcoming book that will be released, where's the best place for them to go?
Just go to mitchrusso.com or go to Amazon and you'll be able to see all of my books there.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Hey, I want to thank you for coming in the middle of your writing day. So spending some time on the podcast, greatly appreciate it. And thanks for being a guest on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.